3 years ago, some of you know that I went through, I got a divorce 3 years ago. Really, really painful. At the time, I also stepped down from being the pastor of a church, never thought I would pastor again, and didn't know what I was going to do. And I had 2 daughters at home that I was still responsible for. No job, no career, no idea what I was going to do. Never thought that my marriage would end. It was the most devastating, awful time of my life. Every morning when I woke up, the first thought was, I don't want to be alive today. Every morning. I was just filled with pain and didn't know how I was going to make it and didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to get through. It was like every day the world was dark, and it was like every day when you opened your eyes, there was this tremendous weight on you from the moment you opened your eyes. And in the middle of that, there were moments where that weight was lifted. One of the first things I remember was some of my dearest friends called me one night and said, we're coming over. And so they came over and they had a huge pan of lasagna. And they came in and they sat down and we ate lasagna together. And then they left me all the leftovers. And it was like, I'd never cooked a meal in my life. I didn't know how to cook. You know how scared I was going to the grocery store for the first time? I didn't even know what to buy. I'm like, if I can buy all this stuff, I bought tons and tons of stuff that a year later I ended up throwing away because it expired, because I just bought it because I thought I might need it and didn't know what to do with it. I was so scared. And all of a sudden, for a little while now, my kids were going to have a meal. They could have cereal in the morning and lasagna every other meal until breakfast the next day. And it was just like, for a moment, this awful, horrible pressure of my life was relieved because they brought me lasagna. I am very grateful for lasagna. And then a neighbor of mine that I didn't even really know all that well wrote me a letter. And she wrote about her divorce and how she made it through and wrote me these wonderful, kind things. And I opened this letter not knowing, we barely even had a conversation in the years that I'd lived next to her. And I opened this up and read it. And for a little while, it was like that act of kindness took that pressure off for a little bit. And that, for the first year and a half, was what it was like. This overwhelming, awful, crushing pressure of my life relieved moment by moment through these little acts of kindness. It gave me hope, gave me strength. What I learned is kindness has incredible healing power. Do you know that? Some of you know that. Some of you know what it's like to be crushed by life and have someone step into your life in that moment and show you kindness. And you know what it's like to have that pressure come off just from that little act of kindness. And it doesn't even have to be much. Kindness is that powerful. And so we're starting a brand new series today. We're calling it Adventures in Kindness. And we are going to be in kindness for 40 days. We are going to talk about kindness for 40 days. And we're going to cover some very challenging topics in this. We're going to talk, as I've already said, about kindness to your enemies. A subject that I think is a terrible subject. I don't want to do it. I'm already telling you right now, I don't want to do this subject. Next week, I'm doing this subject. I've been prepping it. I don't like it. It's stirring up all kinds of feelings inside of me that I don't like. I don't want to do it. So we're going to do it. We're going to talk about kindness towards people who don't even like you, because the Bible does. So we're going to talk about this very challenging topic. We're going to talk about kindness towards yourself, because the reality is some of you are your own worst critics. Your self-talk internally is so negative, you are so not kind to yourself. And you need to learn how to replace the negativity inside with the kindness, and with kindness. We're going to talk about that, but we're going to show you today the power of kindness. And I have a goal, and this is just my goal, and I hope you'll consider this your goal too. There's this beautiful verse in the book of Colossians. Paul wrote to the church in Colossae, and he said, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with kindness. So I'm very grateful that all of you clothed yourself when you came to church today. That makes my job so much easier when you come with clothes on. And for those of you watching, it's like, it's never happened that they haven't, but, right? You got up and you didn't even think about it. You clothed yourself. And Paul said, here's what I want you to clothe yourself every day if you follow Jesus. When you get out of bed, I want you to clothe yourself with kindness. So that when people see you and think about you, one of the words they use to describe you is kind. Do people say that about you today? When people list the descriptors of your life, do they say kind. This is what we're supposed to be. This is what I want to be. And so my goal in this series for the next 40 days isn't to get you to act kindly for a couple of days over the next 40 days. I'd be grateful if you're not being kind, if you moved it up to, like 3 or 4 times in the next 40 days. But the goal ultimately is that I want to be clothed with kindness so that this is how people see me and this is how I live my life, is that kindness just is who I am. I am kind, and that's what I want to be. So that's what we're going to be trying to do in this series. So would you please open up your program? Inside, you will find these notes as Adventures in Kindness. As we're going to start by this. This is really going to set the stage for the entire series that we're going through today. We're going to talk about understanding the power of kindness. That's where we're going to start. So I want to ask you to open your program, grab your notes, grab a pen. If you didn't get one, there are pens in the back. You're welcome to get one. Welcome to those of you who are watching on YouTube, or in the description section below in YouTube are the notes for this. You're welcome to snag those and open them up. And welcome to those of you who are watching on PenndaleChurch.life. So glad that you're there too. So we're going to jump into this really important topic. Yeah, so much to learn about this. And then we're going to end with something different. Now, normally, for those of you regular attenders, and you're like, hey, I know how this thing ends. He prays. We all go home. Don't go home after I pray. I'll remind you to stay put, okay? But we got something special for you at the end today. First thing you need to know about kindness is you want to see how powerful kindness is. Kindness will make you happy. Kindness will make you happy. That's how powerful this is. It's interesting how much research has been done on the subject of kindness. I love the world we live in with this aspect of the world we live in. They can hook your brain up to monitors and watch what happens in different parts of your body when you act in kindness towards someone else. So we know from research, from science, that study after study after study shows that acts of kindness have a substantial impact on both your physical and mental health. Just the act of being kind, and I love the word, substantially will impact your life today. So there's so many research things I could point to. Harvard Business School did a research project on happiness around the globe. So they studied happy people in 136 countries to see if people in Zimbabwe and China and Russia, they're happy. They want to study the happy people. They want to know what are there consistent things around the world that make people happy. And their research came back, and here's what they discovered. People who are altruistic or kind, that's what the idea is. They're generous, they're selfless. In every country all over the planet are the happiest people overall. Doesn't matter where you go. The kindest people in any country are the happiest people in any country. So if you're kind, you'll be happy. And here's what their research showed. The psychological bliss we experience after helping others has a consistent effect on our happiness. You're happier when you're kind. So here's what we know. What it does to us is kindness causes our brain's pleasure and reward centers to light up, because we can see this. We can put sensors on your head and watch what happens when you're kind. So we know that your pleasure and reward centers light up when you're kind, which is where the dopamine is released. So that chemical is a euphoric effect on us, similar to a drug high. As a matter of fact, do you know this? Maybe if you remember your high school chemistry, there are 4 happy chemicals in your head. 4 of them. Dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. All of them are created by kindness. Did you know that? When you're kind, all the happy juice in your brain starts flowing. All of it. All 4 of it. All 4 of these major chemicals start flowing in your brain when you're kind. We tend to feel so good after being kind that researchers refer to it as the helper's high. Some of you are sitting here going, I didn't know about this. Oh, that's not a good thing. Okay, that's not a good thing. It was when you're kind and you're consistently kind, you get to experience what he calls the helper's high, these chemicals. It says the reward area of our brain is found to be more active during acts of kindness, suggesting that we get high on being kind. This is what we know. Now, there was an interesting thing, and this is really significant. Oxford University did their own research study on kindness. We found, and look at what this psychologist came up with. He said, we found that the helping does seem to have a causal effect on happiness. Okay, so here's what this means. You could be sitting here and you're going, okay, well, what is it, the chicken or the egg? Am I happy because I'm being kind, or am I kind? And that's why, which is causing it? And what their research shows, this is really important. If you want to be happy, be kind, because kindness will cause happiness in your life. if that's a significant thing. It's not the other way around. Happy people aren't kind, although they usually can be. Kind people are happy. Kindness will cause you to feel happy. So psychologists, as we've learned more and more about this, are like, well, I wonder if this works in counseling situations. Does this actually help people? Because if you're saying all this stuff is floating through my brain and all of a sudden I got all the happy chemicals in my brain, then what should we do? And so they did a research project with a whole bunch of severely anxious people. So these people are disabled by their anxiety. And for 30 days, they made them do, it was 6 acts of kindness every week. That was their goal. So it wasn't even every day. You get 1 day off where you don't have to be kind to anybody. 6 days a week where you have to be kind and you have to journal about it and write what you felt and what you did. 6 days a week. 1 month later, these people were being changed by the kindness. Notable increase in positive moods, notable increase in relationship satisfaction, decrease in social avoidance. These people's lives were being changed by being kind. The counseling wasn't changing them. They didn't have to take medication. There's nothing wrong with counseling. I go to a counselor. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with medication. But the same effect happens from kindness. And these people with severe anxiety were being changed by being kind. Kindness has that powerful effect on our lives. So I knew this series was coming, and so what I like to do whenever I'm prepping a series, I want to make sure that I'm practicing what I preach, except for next week. No, what I'm doing about that one. But so I was trying to be more kind. Think about how I can just show random acts of kindness to people. And so I used to do this thing. Some of you heard me teach on this once. I used to carry a $20 bill, and I used to call it the $20 challenge. Maybe some of you remember I used to talk about this. I would say every month at the start of your budget, take a $20 bill, put it in your wallet or your pocket or your purse, and just carry it. And then all month long, when you see it or you feel it in your pocket, you pray and say, God, who do you want me to give this to? It's not, I'm not taking $1,000, just $20 or maybe $10. Maybe $10 challenge fits your budget better. It doesn't matter what the amount is, maybe $5. But I used to do this, and so I haven't done it for a while, and I thought, I need to start doing that again. Well, I had a $20 bill in my wallet, and I walked into Dunkin' Donuts. So, talk about the happy chemicals in your brain. Do you know now they have a chocolate donut with chocolate cake, chocolate frosting, and chocolate cream inside? It is amazing, incredible. So I was so happy. I mean, happy. Just seeing the picture makes me happy. So I was in Dunkin' Donuts, getting some donuts and some coffee, and there was a long line. So I'm, happy. And I looked to my right, and they have this little seating areas, like people can come in and study. And there was a guy there, and he was disabled. And you could tell by the way he was dressed that he was very poor. And the moment I saw him, I immediately had this impression in my mind, give him the $20, immediately. And so if you attend here, you know that we talk about God prompting you to do things. So I knew immediately I was supposed to give this guy my $20. But I'm like, God, I haven't even made that formal commitment that I'm doing this $20 challenge thing. But it's like, all right, I just knew it immediately. It's like, all right. So the line was getting shorter. He walked past me, and you could tell he couldn't even move very well, whatever his disability was. And he went back to the bathroom, and he was in there. And so I ordered my donuts and my coffee, and I took the $20 bill out, and there was a high school boy that was, ringing all this up. And I said, do you know that man sitting there? He says, yeah, he works here. And I said, when he comes back, can you just walk over and give him this? Don't tell him who it's from. He doesn't know me anyway. So don't tell him. And he was so confused, like, he works here. I said, well, that's great, but I just want to do something kind for him. And then the boy, when he caught what I was asking him to do, beamed. He was so excited. He took that $20 bill, and then I took my donuts and walked out. And I tell you, what I felt was like walking on clouds. Just floating home. It's like, you get the helper's high when you're kind. You can be happier if you'll be kind. Oh, by the way, God has been saying that for thousands of years. Oh, the joys of those who are kind. Do you want that flood of chemicals in your brain? Then then you're in the right place, because kindness is going to create that for you. kindness will create this feeling of happiness inside of you. So here's a problem. Now, I want to warn you about this because we're now heading into the most materialistic time of our calendar year, right? And the focus will constantly be over the next 2 months. Your life is incomplete because you don't have the brand new version of this, or the brand new version of this, or your house looks like this, your car looks like this. Your car doesn't have a big ribbon on it like this in the driveway. Nobody wants a ribbon on that thing. So you're like, And so there's a constant comparisons going on. It's going to be this way for the next 2 months, right? This is the world that we live in, what we're going to be, and it's going to be focused on getting, and I can't show you any slide that will say happiness will come from getting. You know why? Because it doesn't come from that. So ignore the message that you're going to hear for the next 2 months and understand, if you want to be happy, you want to be happier? Some of you sitting here today, if I asked you, are you happy today? Or would you like to be happier? Some of you say, yeah, I really want to be happier than I am right now. Then this is it. This is the path you go down. You make this commitment to clothe yourself with kindness for this entire series, this adventure in kindness. All right, so the second thing is you need to understand that kindness is good for our bodies. This is so interesting to me, and I know I'm a data geek, and so I'm trying to be really careful with the amount of research I show you, but so in other words, it's good for our brains, it's good for our heart, our emotions, but it's also good for our bodies. Look at this. When we are kind, our bodies release oxytocin, which I already showed you. That triggers a release of something called nitric oxide. Now, that chemical dilutes our blood cells, shrinks inflammation in the cardiovascular system, which reduces blood pressure and the chances of heart disease. So let me summarize this down to just a few things. Okay, ready? Kindness, blah, 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 lower blood pressure and lower chance of heart disease. So you don't need to know all the science that works in the middle of it, because you just need to understand that kindness will physically make your body healthier. And that's not a random thing. We know this so much. The chemicals also reduce something called free radicals. You ever heard of this? It's like little terrorists in your body. And when you're kind, the number of terrorists that are thrown in jail inside your body go up. So you have less of them. And those are, that again, eases vascular inflammation and major factors in coronary artery disease, so you get the point. It actually is physically really good for your body. Did you know that? Studies show that people who are engaged in helping others live longer than those who do not. Did you know that? And it's not that you just survive. You're healthier while you survive. So you live longer and you have a healthier existence if you're kind. So you don't want to just make it to 90 and just be feeble and stuck. No, you can be healthier physically and longevity with kindness. This is what we know. I don't even have time to read you all the research on this one, but it's so interesting. You can look it up online. Researchers at the University of North Carolina have connected kindness with increased activity in the vagus nerve, which helps the body fight diabetes and heart disease. I could just go on and on with this, but I won't. But so here's the thing. If you want to be healthier, be kinder. That's the answer. If you want to be emotionally, mentally, and physically healthier, be kind. Now, here's why. Again, I'm a Christian. I don't hide that at all. And what I want you to know is I believe all of that is rooted in what I believe about God. See, I believe that every human being is created in the image of God. And I believe that our God is profoundly kind. And so we work better physically when we're kind, because then we're like God. We're acting like He does. There's so many verses in the Bible that talk about the kindness of God. The Lord our God is kind and merciful. But the thing that's so significant, our God is not a kind God who sits back on His throne in heaven and watches all of this craziness happening around us and doesn't get involved. That's not kindness, right? That's apathy, sitting back and not getting involved. Our God got involved in a significant way. 2,000 years ago, this God did the unthinkable for a whole bunch of unkind human beings. He sent His only Son into the world on a rescue mission to die and pay for all that we've done that's wrong. That's what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. Take a look at this. When the kindness and love of God our Savior appeared, and He appeared when Jesus came, then Jesus saved us. And He didn't save us because of any good things we've done. He saved us just because of His mercy. But I love that first phrase, when the kindness and love of God, our Savior, appeared. That's what happened. What we're about to celebrate at Christmas is the appearing of God's kindness to us in the form of His Son. So if you want to be physically healthier, be like God, be kind. You don't need a treadmill. No, you may need a treadmill. Right? Let's not go overboard. But physically, emotionally, mentally, you're better, you're healthier if you're kind. Now, then there's this one. This is really interesting. And again, if you think about it, it's kind of adult, but we just don't tend to think about it. At least I never have. It's kind of adult when you think about it because our relationships go better when we're being kind, right? Here's the problem with this. Every person who's been in a romantic relationship, for those of you who are married today, you ever been in a romantic relationship? Kindness kind of peaks at the beginning, right? Right? Isn't that how it goes? So as time goes on, we become less and less kind. If I were to ask you what you did in the early days of dating that person that you're married to, you could probably give me a long list of kind things you did, kind things you said. Oh, I used to tell him this. We used to go on walks together. I used to buy him flowers. I used to leave him notes in nice places. I used to kindness. The rings go on. It's like, and we wonder why the relationship suffers. And, I've seen plenty of relationships at the end of their time together, and they're not kind. It's like this one woman whose marriage was just dying, and she said this. She said, build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for an hour. Light that man on fire, and he will stay warm for the rest of his short little life, right? Right? It's like kindness is gone. Kindness is gone at the end. It's like we're not being kind. Kindness and love are connected. They're connected. I've seen this, like I said, so many times in relationships that are at the end. Many, many times I'm asked to sit down with couples at the end of their time. And the things that they say to each other and the things that they're doing to each other are so unkind, so destructive to the relationship. So it's not a huge surprise that the relationship is ending because there's no kindness there. So if you want to know who the marriage experts are in America today, certainly at the top of everyone who studies this list would be this couple, Dr. John and Julie Gottman. They've been studying marriage for 40 years. Now, the cool thing about them is their marriage principles are based on research. They have a laboratory. And if you go to them for counseling, they hook you up to machines. They hook you up to machines, and then they let you have a fight. Right? And they track everything happening in your brain, in your pulse, in your sweat, everything. And their marriage information is based on research and data. And some point in the next year, I plan to do a whole series on marriage based on their research, because it's based on what's actually best for us as couples, for individuals. So here, again, this won't be too profound, right? Look at this. All successful relationships are ultimately underpinned by kindness. You want to have a great marriage? Then the foundation of that will be kindness. You want to have a great parenting relationship with your kids or with your mom or dad? Then it's got to be the foundation that has to be kindness. All great relationships have this as the foundation. And then they talked about this. This is going to be so interesting to talk about at some point. You know when it's most important to be kind? When you're arguing. How many of you are kind arguers? Right? Is there such a thing? It's like, kind arguers, and they teach this. You can learn how to argue kindly. But of course, it's a duh. It de-escalates your tension, creates a better outcome for all parties. It makes sense. Because love and kindness are connected. I really want you to know that. Love and kindness are connected. You want to see amazing example of this. How many of you have ever read this tiny little book of the Bible called Ruth? Some of you are like, I didn't even know there was a book of the Bible called Ruth. It is a beautiful love story. It starts out with real tragedy. This woman, her husband dies. And her father-in-law dies, and her and her mother-in-law's from Israel, so they move back to Israel. And the mother-in-law says to her daughter-in-law, you're not from there, you'll be a foreigner there, and foreigners were not treated well 2,000 years ago in Israel. And she begged her daughter-in-law to stay. Ruth would not let go of her mother-in-law. It's like, wherever you go, I will go, just don't ask me to leave anymore. So she goes back with her mother-in-law. And she's going back to a life of isolation, rejection, poverty. She's not an Israelite. She's not a Jew, so she's going to be shunned. But she will not leave her mother-in-law. She goes back there, and so it's at the harvest time, and one of the ways in which Israel provided for people who were very, very poor was when the harvesters would go through and pick the grain for the harvest, they would leave behind, if they missed anything, they were commanded to leave that behind for poor people. Widows and orphans and foreigners could come along after the harvesters had gone through and pick up any of the remnants, so at least they would have something to eat. And so Ruth, they get back into the hometown where Naomi's from, and Naomi's heartbroken. She's lost her son, she's lost her husband, and she doesn't know what to do. And so Ruth says, why don't I go out, and the harvesters are going through, why don't I pick some of the leftover grain off the ground? And so she goes out there, and she's just picking up any little head of grain she can as the harvesters go in front of her. And again, this was just how they provided for the poor. And then the owner of the field comes out that day. And he sees his harvesters going through, he's talking to him, and he looks back and he sees that woman, and he goes, who's that? He's like, oh, wow. And so they tell her who she is. And he goes, leave more for her. I want you to intentionally kind of drop a lot of grain. And don't go back and pick it up, and just leave it for her. And by the way, keep an eye on her. And then he goes over to her and says, don't harvest in anyone else's field. You just stay right with my workers. They're going to watch over you. You take care of her. She's a foreigner. This isn't how foreigners treated, that she responds this way. She fell at his feet and thanked him warmly and said, what have I done to deserve such kindness? I'm only a foreigner. This is so unexpected. And he's like, no, I'll take care of you. Now, is it any surprise that this 4 little chapter book turns into this beautiful romance story and marriage and love? And it all began with kindness. Unbelievable kindness. And he loved her from the moment he saw her. Let me tell you this. I just did a wedding. One of my favorite weddings I have ever done. This young man could not smile any bigger on his wedding day. He has just won, in his mind, the grand lottery of all times. So happy. So happy. And I always ask couples now, how do you met and what was a turning point for, he'd been in love with her for a long, 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 long time. She had just treated him like a friend, hadn't really switched. So I asked when the switch happened. She was going through a painful time and he sent her flowers just because. She said, nobody had ever sent me flowers just because. And the moment the flowers arrived and that act of kindness happened, a switch flipped inside of her. And she's like, oh, he's kind of cute, right? And an act of kindness started their marriage. Kindness and love are connected. So for those of you who are married, my question, of course, is are you using this power with your spouse? When was the last time you were kind to your spouse? If you're dating someone, when was the last time you were kind to your boyfriend or girlfriend? If you're a mom or dad, when was the last time you were kind to your kids? Or kids, when was the last time you showed any kindness to your mom or dad? There is tremendous power in this force called kindness. All right, one more. Oh yeah, love is kind, yeah. Kindness is contagious. This is really fun to talk about. Kindness is contagious. Again, just something we don't think about, but it's so true. There was a woman in Seattle who went through a Starbucks drive-through, and she did what some of you heard of people doing. It was like she got to the window, she paid first, and she said, I want to pay for the person behind me. And so she gave them the amount, drove off. That person pulled up to the window, and they said, good news, yours is paid for by the person in front of you. And they're like, oh, really? And they said, I want to pay for the person behind me. And so they paid. And this went on for 378 vehicles. 378 people paid for the person behind them. Can you imagine being the person who broke that? I mean, what are you thinking? Come on, right? Please, right? But only one woke up that day and thought, I'm going to pay for somebody's coffee today, right? Only one. And yet 378 ended up doing it. Why? Because kindness is contagious. You know what we know? We know from research that it's found that everyone involved in an act of kindness, even just watching it happen, benefits from it. They experience the positive effects of kindness on the brain. Kindness is powerful even if you're just watching it. So you watch a simple act of kindness, and all of a sudden something cool starts happening in your brain. Just seeing a simple act of kindness triggers something inside of us. Those positive hormones immediately start flowing. I read this incredible story of a woman who was, or a man who was 40 years ago, he was in college, and he was so poor, he could only afford his textbooks, his classes, that was it. He had nothing left over. He had no family support. He wasn't going to be able to do this. And so he worked a job just to pay for what he could afford for school. And the place he had to cut back on was his food. So this college 40 years ago, what they had is a meal plan. He couldn't afford a meal plan, so you could buy a punch card, and it represented a certain amount of dollars. And you'd go through, you'd get your tray, get your food. At the end, there'd be this person there with a little punch card, or a little puncher, and they would take your card, and they'd click off the amount of dollars that you just spent on the meal for that day. He could only afford a really, really inexpensive meal card, and so he realized right away that if he got a full meal with his punch card, it would never make it to the end of the semester, ever. So he had to start eating a scoop of mashed potatoes, the free crackers they would give by the soup, and his dessert was licking the cinnamon off the toothpicks. He sat alone every day because he wanted to avoid the uncomfortable questions his friends would ask when they would look at why he was only eating a single scoop of mashed potatoes. Mealtime was torturous for him. And then there was the girl at the checkout, who would add everything up and click the card. And her name was Molly, just a young college student herself. And she would see him come through every single day with just a scoop of potatoes and then, the crackers. And she kept saying, "Why aren't you getting more? Why aren't you getting more?" She constantly was trying to get him to buy more. And of course, he was too embarrassed to say anything. But after a while, she realized what was going on, and she stopped asking him. And she just grew more and more frustrated with the situation where she couldn't help. She didn't know what to do. And she saw him, of course, just shrinking as the semester went on. 2 weeks to go before the finals, the end of the semester, the boy thought to himself, "I am never going to be able to make it through finals if I don't start eating." And so, knowing he did not have the money, he filled his tray with a normal amount of food and went to the checkout line, took his card out, couldn't even watch as Molly punched the card, put it back in his pocket, sat down. He did this for days. Finally, with just a few days before the end of the semester, he took his card out. He hadn't looked at it one time since he'd started eating there, but he needed to know how much money he had left. He knew there would be hardly anything, if anything, on his card. He looked at it and he said, "That's when I noticed a miracle had occurred. My card had not gone down at all." He knew right away what had happened. Molly had started punching the air. He was so grateful, he never said anything to her. 3 days later, the semester ended. When he came back in the fall, she was gone, never saw Molly again. When he graduated, he got a good job. He wrote a check to the university to more than pay back the amount of food that he'd eaten and not paid for. Years later, he became a professor himself. And he started teaching evening MBA classes for kids who were working all day long at their job, and they would come to the MBA classes in the evening. Many of them come right from work, they had nothing. So he began every single class with a free meal for every kid that attended his class. Some people thought maybe he's doing it out of guilt. Some people, he's like, nope. He was paying forward what had been done to him 40 years earlier. Kindness is contagious. It's contagious. You have no idea how a simple act of kindness is going to change someone's life, or how many other people downstream are going to have their life changed because of your act of kindness. If you're a follower of Jesus, this is really important. As you can tell, this is going to be a really interesting series. And I want to ask you, if you say that you follow Jesus, my first question is this: are you clothed with kindness? Is this what people say about you? They say, "Oh, he's such a kind man." Do they say that about you? Do they say that you are such a kind woman? Are you clothed with kindness? Would your spouse say that you're kind? Would your kids say that you're kind? Would your parents say it? So if you want to take this up like I want to take this up, then take my challenge with me for this entire series. For the next 40 days, take an adventure and take the challenge. Give yourself the goal of 6 acts of kindness a week. You can take one day off where you don't have to be kind to anyone, okay? You get that one day. But every other day, you be kind. If you're just exploring your faith with us here, I love that verse. I love that verse from Titus. God revealed his kindness to us with what he did in sending Jesus 2,000 years ago. You think about this. This is so significant. God is kind. There is no cruelty in him at all. Unkindness is just apart from God. And yet, it's a part of me. It's a part of all of you. Unless any of you want to claim that you've never been unkind in your entire life, right? It's not even close. We're not even close. And so this has to be taken away from us, or we have to pay for it. Jesus came 2,000 years ago. Kindness was revealed. And Jesus died on a cross to pay for every unkind thing I've ever said or done, and every unkind thing you've ever said or done. Jesus paid it all. And then he rose from the dead. And he offers every human being this opportunity to be completely forgiven by the kindness of God. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. For some of you, this is your next step, is to receive God's kindness in your life. He loves you so much. You've never even imagined how much he loves you. Kindness appeared 2,000 years ago in Jesus. And if you'll let him, he will forgive you and give you eternal life today. Do you want that? With your head bowed, say something like this to him. Say, Jesus, I want that. I've been unkind. I know it. But I heard you died on the cross to pay for that. So would you please forgive me? I want your gift of forgiveness and eternal life today. In Jesus' name, amen. Now don't go anywhere, but do take this out. Even if you're a regular tender and you come every week, I still ask you to fill this out. Just put your name down if you're a regular tender, but we'd love to have this information. Go ahead and put this down. If you just prayed that prayer, you see this box right here. I asked Jesus to forgive me. Just check this box. Let us know what you've done. We'll send you some nice stuff in the mail. Or maybe you renewed your commitment today. Great. Just let us know. And there's 2 offering boxes back on the doors where you can fill this in. Now, so here's your challenge. Ready? 1 act a day, you get 1 day off a week. 1 act a day where you're going to be kind. And you're going to be intentionally, deliberately kind. It's not accidental kindness, okay? You're going to do this. Then I want you to, on the back of your notes today, or the back of your program, we put different ways you can be kind. But you know there are kindness apps. I found one. I tried to get it downloaded this week so I could show you. But go online and Google it. There are kindness apps that will send you kindness reminders every day. Do something on your phone, set an alarm. But the other thing is, when you do your act of kindness each day, write it down somewhere so you remember what you've done. So that way you have a running record. Put it in your notebook, put it on I'm just going to open a Word doc on my laptop and just type it in there. If you want a notebook, fine, do that. But record it. Put the date, what you did. And if you want to, put down how you felt. And maybe some days you don't feel anything. But I know what's going to happen as this goes on, you're going to start feeling something. You're going to really start feeling something as you act in kindness and clothe yourself in kindness. Now, to help you out, we have a gift to get you started. So, 1 month ago, we had this awesome meal. This church knows how to do food. And we charged for the meal, and we always do something with the proceeds of the meal. So this year, what our little church did is we said, why don't we take all the proceeds, and we'll break it up into dollar amounts, and anyone who comes to church on this day, we'll give out cash. And you'll have a way for you to get started showing kindness. And so we're going to give out over $2,000 today for you to just unleash in any way you want. Now, on our great plan, we thought 70 envelopes would be enough. Look around. 70 was not enough. Was it? There's 73. Perfect. It is enough. I volunteer not to get one. So we will hand this out. So that means that every one of you can take one. Oh, that's even better. Okay, now, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start some over here and start some in the middle. I want you to take one. All of you can take one. And then just hand it back. By the way, even the teenagers here, you go ahead and take one. I have no idea if that's enough to start. There we go. Just start them back that way. Now, here's the fun thing. Because we raised so much because we just ate food, we were able to put some of these have $20. So some of you are going to do, you're funded with a $20 challenge right now. So some of you have 20. Yeah, you can all take one. And then some of you are going to have $50. And 3 of you are going to walk out here with $100 today to give away. Okay? So you can do anything you want with this money except for this. Ready? Here's your rules. You cannot spend it on yourself. Okay? Number one rule. Do not spend it on yourself. It's number one. Second, you must use it to serve others. So here's what I want you to do is pray. Ask God who you want to serve with it. So what I used to do is I would put like a paper clip on it because if I carried money in my wallet, I could forget that it was set aside for God. Put a paper clip or something on it so that you know that this is dedicated. And when you see it, pray and say, God, who do you want me to give this to? And then keep your eyes open. You don't think you're going to encounter people this week or these next few weeks that are in need. You are going to encounter a lot of them. And just pray and say, God, who do you want me to serve with this? Who do you want me to give this to? And just keep your eyes open and pray. And by the way, if you didn't get one, the person back there, yep, that's right. We'll make sure we get one for you. And then here's the thing. With this money, I want you to email me back how you ended up using it. Okay? Email me or write me back. It's just myname@gmail.com. So my name is in the program, just myname@gmail.com. And we'll remind you of this over the whole series. So you have to tell me how you used it, and then be creative. I've done this before in the past. Some people are like, no matter what's in my envelope, I'm going to double it. I've had lots of people say that. I'm going to pray, before I open this, no matter what it is, I'm going to pray, and whatever it is, I'm going to double it. Okay, so maybe that's what you want to do. Some of you may want to pool it together. Say, well, I'm going to get some other friends together, and we're going to pool it together. I'm going to ask other friends to kick in on this, and we're going to try and give even more. You can be creative as you want to be. But you're going to have this happen. You're going to have my Dunkin' Donuts moment. You're going to walk into Dunkin' Donuts and going to say, that's the one. That's the one. Now, here's the thing. I've had this experience where it's like it doesn't happen in this time period because we want you to tell us the stories by November 24th, and this will be in the program coming up. If it doesn't happen by then, I don't care. You keep it until God taps you and says, that's the one. It could be a cause. It doesn't have to be a person. Sometimes it's a cause that really strikes your heart. So you just be creative, and you spend it any way that God really prompts and guides you, okay? Everyone clear on your assignments? This will get you started with your kindness adventure. Thanks so much for coming. Hope to see you again next week. Oh, by the way, sorry, I forgot one more thing. We have these books, and we didn't buy anywhere near enough. But if you want one of these, it's a 30-day adventure on kindness. They're $14. You can just put $14, throw them in there. Yeah, they're on the back offering boxes, or they're up here on the front pew if you want to get one. Otherwise, if you don't want to get one today, you can pick them up anytime during this series, and this will give you lots and lots of ideas. Now, thank you for coming.